Shalom, family, and welcome to the weekly news update. I'm so glad you joined us. Thank you so much for doing so. It's always a pleasure and a privilege when we get together. Can get that out there. A privilege when we get together and join together for these weekly updates. We like to do these weekly because we found out that getting too many updates produce too much anxiety, and then there were those who had gone to the other extreme, which was to completely disconnect from any kind of news at all, which we found to be, again, another extreme. So we came up with this weekly pace, and it so far worked out pretty well. So thank you again, those of you that shared the link, that encourage others to join us for these weekly reviews. And what we do is kind of a 10,000 foot view of news articles that are coming out, things that are happening around the world from a scriptural perspective. And again, we welcome all of you from wherever you are who are joining us, and certainly thankful that you're here. And for those of you who may be here for the first time, may not know this, we do have a website called remnantwatch.com where you're going to find all the stories that we cover during our weekly news updates. You'll always notice, again, a banner here at the top that'll bring you to our latest edition of the weekly news update. So today's edition right there on the top. And I also want to point out that these free survival guides are available still here on the top of the leaderboard, if you will, for those. I tell you, I really feel like everybody should have those, because it's kind of one of those things where you don't know that you're going to need them until you need it. It's one of those situations where how do you know there's going to be a disaster until the disaster shows up? And at that point, it's a little late to be preparing. So it's a good idea to have those things, to be aware of, at least to have, like the fire drills when we were young. We all did those. And of course, we hope we never needed to escape through the fire escape. And hopefully you never had to go through that trauma. But if you did, it was nice to know there was a plan, and there was an escape hatch. There was a program. When that's not even been thought through, that makes every disaster that much harder. So I encourage you all, especially parents and grandparents, to just think these things through. Think your exits out, things like that. That could make a difference in a difficult disaster situation between life and death. So again, the wise, according to Scripture, see trouble far off and hide themselves. So that's what we try to do. So again, thank you again, those of you that are joining us. I apologize for the later time this week. We had a little bit of a technical difficulty, but we were able to get over that. So again, thank you so much for your patience. And on that note, let's get into the news. And tonight's top story is actually a little disturbing, that Mr. Peacemaker Trump is threatening war against Venezuela's Maduro government. And of course, they have made already comments for some time that they didn't believe the Maduro government was legitimate. So there's a lot of hostility that's already been going back and forth. And so now there's more discussions because there's more movement. First, on July 25th, the U.S. Treasury Department, Office of Foreign Assets Control, designated Venezuela's Cartel de los Sols a specially designated global terrorist entity. This simply offers the excuse for U.S. to continue waging its war on terror much closer to home against the Western Hemisphere. And of course, depending upon what news you read, you're going to hear different perspectives on that. So if you get on over to Bloomberg, and you're going to read a little bit different perspective. And again, we don't cross into paywalls, not because we can't pay the $10 or $20, but because you're not paying for broadcast rights, right? So even if we were to pay for that, we still wouldn't be paying for broadcast rights. So that's why we just don't even do it. It just prevents us from making the mistake of broadcasting something behind a paywall that might cause us a problem. So that's why we don't do that, folks. It's out of respect for those companies that put their articles behind paywalls. And again, they don't offer a broadcast version of a link, so we just have to respect the door. And we're seeing a crackdown in the United States. For those of you that are outside the U.S., you may not know this, but in the United States, and even some of you that may not be involved in some of the eastern cities and so forth, you may not know this, but the National Guard is mobilizing throughout the United States. And now they're using the cover story of immigration, but I think there may be other threats that they are concerned about, especially considering, again, that we are in a sense through a proxy and a hot war with Russia. We are also in conflict with Iran, which, just because we stopped bombing doesn't mean they declared it over. So there's a lot of threats that are out there these days. So the National Guard being mobilized is actually maybe a comforting sign to those that are looking for at least some type of defensive posturing. And so the National Guard is mobilizing in 19 states amid immigration crime crackdown is also part of what they're talking about. So that's something that President Trump did threaten to do when he was running for president, and up to 1,700 National Guardsmen are set to mobilize in 19 states in the coming weeks to assist the Department of Homeland Security with President Donald Trump's nationwide crackdown on illegal immigration and crime. And so, again, couching it rather, in that type of language. And nevertheless, it concerns us because we have laws against the troops, if you will, patrolling our own streets and so forth. So this, of course, concerns those that are libertarians, those that are strict constitutionalists, and I think with good reason. And I think it's something that we should take pause, be paying attention with a bit of a squinted eye, like, what are you doing there, Mr. and Mrs. Government? Where do you think perchance that you're going with all that extra authority you seem to be grabbing? And it better be very short term, and it better be very temporary, and it better be very easy to justify. There had better been an imminent threat, right? Because if you're trying to institute a new normal, well, then there should be a response to that. So I believe that hopefully this will be a temporary thing, that we're seeing this roll out. But I don't know. What are your thoughts, folks? Because I think it's quite ominous to see in the United States. How many of you expected to see that as a headline? I mean, I suppose you're not surprised anymore, but I bet 5 years ago you would have said, wow, that's something, right? So we're definitely moving into a different season. I think we can all agree on that. And we can agree that things have changed in our world irrevocably, which means that we now must look at the word in the scriptures through new lenses. And speaking of that, those that are in the Middle East, those that are in Israel and in the Palestinian territories, most certainly are looking at a brand new world. And of course, now there's moves in the West Bank and Gaza, and Israel is approving new settlements in the occupied West Bank, and their troops are reaching the outskirts of Gaza City. And so essentially you're seeing a shift in the way that Israel is prosecuting what it's doing. And there are definitely people that have different opinions about that. So again, what does this mean? Well, it certainly portends greater conflict in the region because it is a bit of a provocation. I don't think you can deny, no matter what side of this conflict you stand on, I don't think you can deny that it is most certainly provoking responses. And Israel is going to be calling up to 60,000 reservists for their Gaza City invasion. So they're calling it a liberation of Gaza. And, there may be some people that agree with that. Maybe they think that's what's going to be happening. But my suspicion is we're going to be getting a different overall picture as this unfolds. And decisions come to most Israelis want war to end in a deal to free remaining hostages held by Hamas. The Israeli military said on Wednesday that it would begin calling up around 60,000 reservists for duty as it proceeds with plans to take over Gaza City, a Hamas stronghold where hundreds of thousands of Palestinians are believed to be sheltering. So they are sort of letting go of some of the pretense that we heard in the earlier parts of this conflict, some of the reasonings and so forth. We're not hearing that anymore. Now we're hearing much more direct speech concerning what their ambitions are and what their plans are. So I suspect that this is going to get, this is a real potential powder keg, folks, because the scripture portends that there's going to be a massive last conflict that ends all conflict. In fact, so great is this conflict that we beat our swords into plowshares. And we still haven't done that, obviously. You can tell by the news. So there's still that prophecy to be fulfilled where we learn war no more. And we haven't gotten there yet. And so we're waiting for that day. But we know that there's one more of these conflagrations, one more time, mankind's going to go about its thing in order to bring about the end of these conflicts forever. So we thank Yahuwah that we are coming to the end, but it's a nasty neighborhood we're going to walk through. And some of you are going to find this very interesting, especially in parallel to things that are written in the book of Revelation. There's about 10 countries that are ready to send troops to Ukraine as part of a peace agreement. How many find that interesting, right? So about 10 European countries would be prepared to send troops to Ukraine once Russia's full-scale war ends, Bloomberg reports, citing informed sources. And according to the report, European officials discussed a plan on Tuesday to deploy British and French troops in Ukraine as part of a future peace agreement, including troop numbers and their placement. And the UK government said that in the coming days, European military officials will meet with the U.S. representatives to develop robust security guarantees and prepare for the deployment of a reassurance force if the hostilities have ended. So they're already planning the peace. As we keep saying, every one of these conflicts all end with somebody sitting at a table. So why don't we just go to the table? No, we got to blow things up first. We've got to make widows. We've got to, destroy homes and families, and then go to the table. Can you understand why I get a little frustrated when I've seen this for how many decades, right? You get a little tired of looking at the same stupidity. Blow things up, go to the table. Blow things up, go to the table. Same old, different day. Meet the new boss, same as the old boss. Man just can't get out of his own way. And even if he's given, guys, you got to know this, okay? Mankind can't get out of his own way, and even if he's given a free pass, freedom and security, that doesn't always mean they're going to take it. Some of you have seen your friends and family where you've offered them things or what have you. You've watched this phenomenon where people will choose that which is destructive even to their own lives. You've got to kind of wonder what's going on there, right? But you cannot change. You cannot force a change into people's life. I like the way my brother David says this. You can lead a man to water, but you can lead a horse on water, but you cannot make him drink. And you can lead a man to knowledge, but you cannot make him think. He's got to do that for himself. And so there's so many people that I unfortunately see making these decisions that are detrimental. Speaking of detrimental, we've got international conflict that continues to brew. And so this is one of the reasons why we pay attention to this stuff, is because we don't want to be caught by surprise by some of these things. But how many know North Korea doesn't like to be left out of the news cycle? So every once in a while, it'll rattle something or do something to get back in the news cycle. Have you guys noticed that? North Korea is like, hey, you have not talked about us. We must get back in the news. They always do something to get back into the news cycle, right? So from drones to nukes, North Korea pushes AI military modernization plan. By the way, this is a really bad idea. Can I just go on the record as saying giving AI, this confused LLM technology, control over equipment is about the dumbest idea I think I could ever hear of. The General Staff Department aims to review the plans through October and incorporate chosen aspects into winter training, executing them from December 1st. So they're going ahead with this. The General Staff of North Korea, according to the daily North Korean source in the North Korean military recently, Combat Training Bureau of the GSD on August 2nd issued an official order to the operational departments of the services of the arms across KPA through encrypted wireless networks, instructing them to make plans to build AI-based manned and unmanned multi-purpose combat systems ahead of the Ninth Party Congress. So they're pushing, they're all trying to get it done before the other guys. We must build the drone army. We must build the drones. You can almost hear them. We must have our own drones. You can almost hear them in their basement dungeon, like we're going to take over the world kind of conversations. And we will build the best drones. Our drones will beat every drone. Everybody's drone will die. Well, at least we're going to have robots fight. That's better than people, all right? So can we get the people out of the way? Cool. You guys just going to do the robot thing? Awesome. Robot battles. We'll watch that on TV, right? As long as nobody's getting hurt and not hurting humans, fine. That actually sounds fine. Sounds like a game, but unfortunately, they're weaponizing these things, and we're going to end up with Terminator. And I laugh, but I laugh hoping I'm wrong. Let's hope that doesn't turn out to be the case, because I don't think arming, again, foolish and incognitant LLM is a good idea. So if they're actually contemplating that, that's really, really bad news. Let's hope not. And again, we continue to see more news again across the United States. And now I pepper this back in because, well, now you think about it and say, maybe there are other reasons why we're seeing the National Guard heading to D.C. and preparing to carry weapons and things like that. Maybe there's more going on is all I'm trying to say, guys, is there's maybe more coming for this fall season. And it certainly looks like that. The shift comes after defense officials said the soldiers deployed to the Capitol wouldn't be armed, and now they are going to be armed. And I think we mentioned this story last week, but it bears repeating. More National Guard troops are heading to Washington, D.C., and they are preparing to start carrying weapons. So we are in a different time. They are not making it sound like it. So they're clearly deliberately trying to sort of downplay the reality of what we're seeing. But we can't deny that there's a massive shift of things going on right now. So it's certainly one of those time periods that even if you're not a Bible prophecy watcher or a scripture watcher, you're still a little aware. You're still awake. You're still going, hey, not feeling real comfortable right now. Like there's a lot happening. And there's also a lot happening in the ground or the earth itself responding. And this is something that I personally find very telling because, again, man doesn't have a lot to do with it. Politics and money and all this other news, man's involved. But when the earth is responding and things like that, which we'll get to a couple stories today, that's what gets me pause. What do you guys think? Give me your comments. I'd appreciate it. See, we've got a lively comment going on today. Thank you so much, guys, for participating with us in these get-togethers, weekly get-togethers. And I don't know if you know this, but the war in Ukraine is not over. And as a matter of fact, there was a break through the Ukrainian line. So even, they're here while they're talking about going to the table, while they're talking about, negotiating and all of this stuff. And the 10 nations are going to go talk to Trump. In the meantime, are you noticing this, guys? Meanwhile, back at the ranch, Putin's bloodbath, Russia breaks through Ukrainian front line as Putin sends 110,000 troops into the meat grinder days before Trump's summit. So before they even met, he went full tilt. Okay, he went full tilt. And, of course, Vladimir Putin forces have been brutally broken through Ukraine's front lines. And just days before the showdown with Trump. So, of course, changing their negotiating position. And so that changes the whole thing. And unfortunately, that is a challenge that now Europe is going to have to deal with. So that's why they're getting involved with, there's 10 nations saying we're going to go in there and police this thing. Oh, they want to be a trigger force. They want to be a tripwire. So should Russia get ambitious, they would have to deal with that force first. But I can tell you right now that, they don't have 110,000 troops to put in Ukraine. And Russia just marshaled that many for just one offensive. So I think they're sufficiently intimidated by the size of the problem that it is facing. And Russia has updated its nuclear program amid some of the threats that it has perceived from the West. So Moscow's nuclear chief says nuclear improvements must be made to the New START treaty to set expire in February. Because, and again, they are marketing from or coming from a position of strength. Russia's top nuclear official said this week Moscow is facing colossal threats and needs to update its nuclear capabilities. And without directly naming where Russia's chief nuclear threat is coming from, they're basically making the point. So essentially, you're going to see either a new arms race or a new START treaty, one or the other. My suspicion is that if there isn't a major change in the geopolitical construct as we see it, conflict is inevitable. It is just inevitable. Whenever there's a shift of power, it's very one of the marvels of the modern era is the transfer of power, peaceful transfer of power that occurs 4 or 8 years in the United States, because it is typically a bloodbath when power shifts. So we shouldn't be shocked to see that it shifts, and there's definitely warfare involved throughout the earth as power shifts sort of toward the east as they develop more and more of their strength. And there's certain things that the government is doing, though. You can look forward to them dumping a bunch of insects all over the Bay Area. Did you hear this, guys? I found this to be fascinating. So let me see if I got this right, because you guys got nothing else to do, apparently. So they're going to dump millions of flies over the Bay Area towns. What are we normalizing here? What are we making sound okay? This is wild to me. If you happen to live in the South Bay and see government aircraft circling ahead, watch out, because chances are they're about to dump hundreds of thousands of irradiated fruit flies directly near you. Though it sounds like the plot of a John Carpenter film, local officials say this is necessary. Absolutely necessary. Okay? In other words, hey, yeah, is it a flyby? A good one, Heidi. Hey, absolutely necessary. In other words, we just would not make it without this intervention. The earth needs us to intervene by throwing at it these things. Can you understand how crazy this looks? According to a Thursday news release from the California Department of Food and Agriculture, 2 invasive female Mediterranean fruit flies, med flies, which they've been dealing with since I was a young man. I got a teenager. These basically they're attacking this, and by doing this sort of intervention, the hope is that they're able to attack them. Okay, it kind of makes some sense. But David, who's my cousin, he can tell you we've been hearing about the Mediterranean fruit fly in California for 40 years, I think. I think isn't it about 40, David? It's about 40 years, because it goes back to the 80s, the early 80s, when we were hearing about the fruit fly, and you couldn't bring certain things into California, and you couldn't bring fruit from other states and things like that. You had to get it only in California. And I thought, yeah, Max remembers. It's been a long time. And it's like, wait a second. You guys are still dealing with it. You're still using this fruit fly. It's like they dug out the fruit fly excuse. That's how it looks to me. That's just my opinion. So what do you guys think? Feels to me like another form of manipulation. So I would be looking very closely at what they're actually doing, and I wouldn't be paying any attention to what they say they're doing. How about you guys? What do you think? Do you trust them? Do you believe they're telling the truth about what their intentions are and so forth? I don't know. I just don't feel it. I don't feel the confidence that they're Their altruistic best interests are, are they're altruistically looking out for your best interest. That's what I meant to say. So it's something that we're going to kind of continue to watch. Speaking of what's probably not being done in your best interest, if you've got a YouTube channel, and I didn't know this, so maybe this is true, maybe this is not. I don't know. I just saw this today. So I was not aware of this. If it's true, it's kind of like, well, really, guys? I mean, seriously, YouTube secretly uses AI to edit people's videos? I didn't know that. And that they're using it to bend reality. YouTube made AI enhancements to videos without telling users or asking permission. Is that true? I didn't know that. As AI quietly mediates our world, what happens to our shared connection with real life? It's a great question. Okay. And basically, he said, the closer I looked at it, it almost seems like somebody was wearing makeup. And sure enough, somebody saw that their YouTube channel basically had been altered without their consent. And one of the things that we're concerned about with some of this technology is that they are literally going to be able to hijack entire personalities without consent, making it much more difficult for us to parse real world from fake. And so that becomes very dangerous and something that we need to be a sober people about, because technology that it serves and benefits mankind is great. Technology that tricks, deceives, or enslaves mankind, that's a different matter. Okay, so again, if it's useful and beneficial, great. A lot of tech we've got, a lot of things that we do technically that are very beneficial and very good. But if it's used in any way to deceive, manipulate, or enslave mankind, then that is a different technology with a different intention. And that's something that I think we're watching today. So something for us to be aware of and be awake to. And there does seem to be, it's almost as far back as there is the curse of Balaam, right? So there's those that wish to govern the mind. In fact, when you break down the word government, it means to mind control. That's what it means. Government means mind control. And so if you really think about that word, and so it doesn't surprise me that we continue to see sort of a march, sort of a steady drone, step march to putting chips into people's heads to help them think. Now, they're trying to sell it like you're going to be super smart. You're going to have like Google access right in your brain because their phone's not close enough. Apparently that's too far. It's got to be right in your head. You can't look it up. No, we can't have that. We're going to have it right, piped right in, just piped it right in there. And you say, no, Peter, come on now. You're telling whoppers. They're not going to do that. That's what I would have thought. I would have thought, who's going to fall for that? Who's going to go in and sit down and let them put a chip? These guys, they can't even get their garage door opener to work half the time. And you're going to let them put a chip in your brain? I'm sorry, but, and then here you go. These brain implants are planning to speak to your mind even when you don't want to. Oh, well, what could go wrong? Anybody remember that Spider-Man version with the Doc Ock, that the chip went crazy and made him go crazy? Yeah. What a shock that we might see something like that. Surgical implanted devices that allow paralyzed people. Oh, well, there you go. There's your selling point. I mean, who can argue with that? It's going to be given to the paralyzed people. Well, of course, now we got to say yes. I mean, now is perfect. You ever notice that, by the way? They always find the most noble reason, stick it out there in front and say, this is why we're doing it. Sure it is. Sure it is. And so, again, that is the conclusion of the BCIs in their journal Cell. The finding could lead to BCIs that allow paralyzed users to produce synthesized speech more quickly and with less effort. But the idea with the new technology can decode a person's inner voice is unsettling. And that is actually quite true. When you think about it, there's only so much safety and so much sanctity left in the world and so much privacy left in the world. So now you want to stick a chip in. Let's see if I got this right. Sticking chip in people's heads. So the inner thoughts. So it wasn't okay that so you're already tapping their phone. Talk about the creepy like boyfriend syndrome going on here. Just pay attention to this, guys. Already tapping your phone. They watch everything you do, paying attention to all your conversations, and that wasn't enough. That's not enough. It's just not enough, is it? It's just not enough. So now on top of all that, of all the other data they got crisscrossing and catching, now we just don't have enough information. We need just a little bit more. So can we just get right on the inside of your head? Can we just get on the inside of your brain and just catch it a little, like right as you're thinking a thought? Okay, can we just get it right then? That way we just know it exactly as when you think it. How about that? How about we do that? How about you tell them to pound sand? What in the world are we thinking? Apparently, we aren't. If anyone thinks this is a good idea, well, they need their head examined and not for a chip implant. Okay? It's a terrible idea. It's a terrible, terrible, terrible idea. And I'm not even going to go to the book of Revelation to tell you how bad of an idea that is. This is a bad idea even without fulfillment of scripture. But now they're making the beast speak, right? So this is wow. We've crossed over into some pretty wild territory. And it's not going to be great for everybody. Right now, we're seeing a big pushback. I think the Trump administration drew some attention and some negative press with the whole Epstein thing, right? So now they're pushing back hard to push some headlines out there, get things out there that make it look like they're tough on crime, and getting the bad guys and definitely going after the deep state, right? So now look at this. John Bolton, who was part of the administration of the first Trump administration, his home and offices were raided by federal agents. And the search, of course, is focused on potential classified documents agents believe Bolton may still possess, which, we saw they let the former president off on that. They're not letting other people off on that. They're going to come get that guy. So FBI agents raided the Maryland home of the former national security advisor, John Bolton, on Friday, Fox News Digital has learned. And basically, we're seeing an internal crackdown. What I think you're actually seeing is a civil war. So one of the things that we were told about was that we would see a civil war here in the United States, and that civil war would be, this is one of the things that I was given, would be quite severe. And so is it possible that some of the damage that we've seen in the United States, some of the things that blew up, refineries that blew up, things that occurred, could it be that it's part of some other thing going on? Is there a war going on that we don't know about? We don't know, because we don't know about it. But it's certainly suspicious. It certainly makes us go, things that make you go, right? And so I kind of wonder if this Bolton arrest, and I'd love your thoughts, guys, because you guys have discernment beyond the news and all that. So what are you getting? Because I get the feeling that there's a jockeying for position. There's a bit of chess going on, and rooks and bishops and knights are being taken off the board as the bigger players are going at it. Okay, so what do we really got going on here? I don't know, but it looks pretty rough. So that's a good thing if you're hoping for change, because you're getting it. Absolutely. Speaking of change, again, I continue to be concerned about the geological things that are happening. We now understand that there are volcanoes that are going off the coast of Oregon. I do not have any further reports on that, but I did see something about it, so I'm waiting to get more. But there is mega tsunami warnings. 1,000-foot tsunami hit the U.S. Pacific coast. Scientists are raising alarm that this could, in fact, happen. So scientists are sounding an alarm about a potential devastating mega tsunami that could strike the U.S. Pacific coast, triggered by a powerful earthquake along the Cascadia subduction zone. And this fault line, which spans approximately 600 miles from Northern California to Vancouver Island, is under immense tectonic pressure as the Juan de Fuca plate is slowly forced beneath the North American plate. So for those of you that pay attention to these things, and I really recommend like Dutch Sense and guys like that who are super awesome, expert, brilliant guys who know all about these cool little things. And I mean, they're not cool little things, but they're intense and very detailed. And so, but as I understand it, one plate goes under the other, and that could potentially create major earthquakes. And so now the warning is that there may potentially be tsunamis to go with that. So again, a lot of warnings on the West Coast, a lot of warnings about the West Coast that are going up in frequency. So we certainly are concerned about that. And we've seen many prophecies that have come out about California. So I don't think anybody would be surprised if it did all of a sudden fall in the ocean. Just saying. So again, we have to be in prayer for those people that are there. And then, yes, like my brother said, the big volcano in Hawaii is spewing pretty hard. So we're seeing the volcanic activity that is confirming that something at the the plate level, if you will, if you want to call it that, I don't know what you call that, but that plate level is definitely being disturbed at a pretty high rate, at a rate that's affecting the surface. So we can't say what will come next. And that's why it's important for us to be sober and vigilant. If you're being told to get out of Dodge, you might want to listen to the voice. Amen. And there are other challenges that we're starting to figure out. And how many of you are starting to really realize how many health effects, how many health ailments are directly affected by our parasite level? And in fact, if you were a historian and started reading medical journals of the late 1800s, middle to late 1800s, you would find the predominant amount of medical treatments were anti-parasitic. And so there's something that you don't hear a whole lot about in our modern medical system, but it is still very much the reason for many ailments. And of course, the U.S. confirms the nation's first travel associated human skewworm, which is connected to the Central American outbreak. And this is a parasite. And so this Maryland case, of course, there's drawing attention, which is great. It's bad for the victims, but it's good for everyone to be awake. Okay, and so this is good. The U.S. Department of Health and Human Services on Sunday reported the first human case in the United States of travel-associated New World screwworm, a flesh-eating parasite from the outbreak-affected country. And by the way, I've seen several articles in the last couple of weeks about flesh-eating bacteria. Tectonic plates. Thank you, David. That was the word I was looking for. I couldn't think of the word. So for those of you that, if anyone is affected by that, if anyone gets that in their body, definitely communicate with us immediately, and we will forward you the remedy as quickly as possible, because Shaman Raphael will arrest that flesh-eating disease. But you've got to get at it quick. It's very dangerous. And if you go out into the water there were reports of just off the coast of Daytona Beach and just the eastern coast of the United States, there's this flesh-eating contamination out there. So be aware of it, folks, and definitely be people that have the remedy. After all, remember the disciples were essentially physicians, rather. Not pharmacists, physicians. They would go out and help people recover from their sickness and disease. So you are, who is physicians, go out there and heal people, help them, right? Heal them of their sickness and their disease. Speaking of sickness and disease, this thing happened in New York City as a deadly vapor claimed fifth Manhattan victim. I don't know if they even know what this is. Doctors lists no-go areas and reveals mind-altering symptoms that mimic flu but kills in days. New York has recorded fifth deadly outbreak of Legionnaire's disease, a lung infection spread by toxic water vapor, sparking fears of more victims across the city. The city announced on Monday that since the outbreak in late July, 108 people have been infected with Legionnaire's disease, a type of pneumonia that spreads through bacteria lurking in warm water. Legionnaire's disease mimics the flu before progressing to pneumonia, with patients suffering symptoms such as high fever, breathing trouble, and even mental confusion. And so again, we're suddenly seeing more of these kinds of things. And again, the scripture did tell us that we would see pestilence in the last days. So we're not surprised by that. We also were told that we would see earthquakes. And Los Angeles, of course, is, you see earthquakes all over the place. But this one wasn't in Los Angeles. So I don't know why that's there. This was down in the tip of Argentina. A major preliminary magnitude 7.5 struck in the South Atlantic Ocean Thursday, United States Geological Survey reported, prompting Chilean authorities to issue an advisory of potential tsunami. Basically, this is down by the Drake Pass. Oh, we don't have a picture of it. Okay, well, sorry about that, guys. Down by the Drake Pass. Now, what that shows, and if you guys know anything about that, I'll see if I can get one on the screen while we're talking here, is a part of the world where there are some people believe, and I don't know, they might be right, guys. There may be some truth to their belief that I've heard a lot of different things, but I've heard that it's possible that what you have here is Leviathan sleeping. And so there's some that believe that. Here's where that occurred. And if you look closely at this, especially on Google Earth, you will see that there is almost like a face of a alligator, like an alligator face, right? You know, alligators, when they sleep, they just stick their nose out and the rest of their body's under the water. Well, there's some that believe that that's Leviathan, as described in the scripture. If Leviathan just moves, entire continents get rearranged. So is this what we're seeing? We don't know. But we're going to find out, right? We're going to find out here soon enough. So this is what, again, makes this extraordinary times that we're living in. We're going to find things out that we didn't know were on the earth. That's going to be a trip, isn't it? And so I think that we've got some revelation yet to have. Here we see creepy, venomous creatures wash ashore in top summer hotspot, sending the swimmers scurrying and leaving the beaches. Man, they were freaking out over this thing. Look at that. They were freaking out over it. I just thought, what is that? We banned the swimming of all municipal beaches until a new order. They got to figure out what this thing is. This thing's coming up from deep inside the water, folks. They don't know what they are. And so we're all discovering things about our world that we didn't know before, that we didn't know existed. And again, more and more pestilence. So we do see a invasive tick that could saddle you with a little known debilitating infection. So really be careful about ticks. So those of you that are in tick territory and tick country, boy, you've really got to be really careful for Lyme disease and the things that it can do. And so many people were treated as if they were crazy for having this thing, but in fact, it is real. An invasive tick species is creeping its way into more parts of the country as warming temperatures help it spread to little-known infections that can leave people with debilitating symptoms and, in rare cases, dead. Scientists in Connecticut Agricultural and Experiment Station in New Haven discovered for the first time the longhorn tick had become a carrier for the bacterium that causes essentially Lyme disease. So just be aware, folks, that you can't take things for granted like we did, even 20 years ago. So it's become a much more hostile environment out there, right? And that includes even things we take for granted in the stores. So I asked Mama earlier, I said, hey, do you buy these brands? And she said, no. I said, okay, well, you guys need to check because there are recalls of over 5,000 pounds of cheese recalled by the FDA due to serious contaminations over fetal bacteria, right? So these are the brands here, Middlefield Original. So if that looks familiar to you, if that's a brand that you frequently purchase, you might have in your freezer or your fridge, double check with this article. It'll be here on remnantwatch.com. Double check with it, please, to make sure you're not in that contaminated batch if you happen to be people that purchase that product. So more than 5,000 pounds of cheese products made by Middlefield Original Cheese Co-op are being voluntarily recalled after the company discovered contamination by potentially deadly bacteria. Okay, so just to be aware of that, guys, just don't be naive about your food. When you buy food that's pre-done, like this is somebody made this, you're taking a risk. You do need to keep an eye on food recall bulletins. Seem to be a lot more of those lately than ever before. Anybody else notice that, or is it just me? It might just be me, but I don't remember seeing that many recalls. Do you guys? It seems to me like there's a lot of food recalls in the last year. Speaking of recalls, a lot of people can't get their cars getting recalled. They can't afford to pay it. You know that now the average loan on a car, just a car, is 7 years? 7 years is, according to scripture, the longest you could loan for anything. So they've maxed this out. Yeah, 7-year loans for cars are becoming normal. And I'm not going to go into this big time, but I'm just pointing it out that the economic situation is tightening in every sector. So be aware of that, because that does fulfill the scripture. There are scriptures that talk about the a day's wages, a man's day's wages just for his food. So it's going to become very difficult. Well, we're seeing that now. They're anticipating that the average grocery budget is going to go up, $40 to $60 a week or something like that. I saw an article talking about this very issue, because of the tariffs and the tit for tats that are going on and what have you. The whole situation is changing. And again, when you have governments that are admitting that they need populations to reduce so that they can fiscally survive, it's not a good sign. All right, it's not good. Look at this, 50% of adults, well, they're ordering the kids' meals. And basically, that's actually a phenomenon that was going on for a while. But yeah, apparently grown-ups love a good kiddie meal too. That's one of the takeaways in a new survey conducted by Lightspeed, is that the way people are surviving is they're eating children's meals. And the survey cited smaller portions as a key factor, but also pointed to budget-friendly prices and simpler choices. And whether it's a mini burger or mac and cheese, the kids' menu is becoming a smart option. And that actually is nothing new, but now it's becoming even more prevalent. So we're seeing more and more people pushing lower, if you will, in the chain, in the economic strata, and that is because of a lack of unity. The more people continue to fracture and try to do things on their own, only a few will survive that, and the ones that survive it will realize that they were foolish to do so. They were much wiser to have banded together, united into one accord, and all survived together. But instead, they tried to compete with one another, and this is why they ended up outside of a boat in Noah's day. This mentality will never be endorsed. Just know that. And so we do see an absence of understanding of even the basic things of the kingdom in this generation. So if you're expecting people to have basic decency or basic understanding of right and wrong and so forth, your Sunday school version of, basic manners and so forth, well, that day is past, where we took that for granted. And now what we're seeing the evidence of, and many of you have already discerned this for other reasons as well, but that the generations that are coming up now have the lowest engagement in the scripture and the things of the kingdom of any previous generation, I would say. And this represents a great falling away. And not just because they were doctrinally incorrect or because they got certain things wrong, but they're missing the main thing, which is to love one another. And without fellowship, without connection, without connecting points, there's no way to say you're doing that. And so it's a very important thing for us to take note of, that the Gen Z generation is turning their back on those things which were traditional to American culture. Members of the Gen Z are significantly less engaged with their churches than their older counterparts, according to research showing that those with higher levels of church engagement tend to have higher levels of flourishing and well-being. So what they're seeing is people are going away from that which does produce well-being. And where was that well-being coming from? Unity. For there Yahuwah commands the barakah. Okay. And so what we're seeing now is we're seeing more and more people are disconnected than ever before. And they don't have points of connection and points of fellowship, meaning joint partnership in endeavor, not just eating cake together. So joint partnership in endeavor of some sort or another. That's what fellowship is. And when we see that dissipate, well, we see a falling away, the great falling away. But here's the good news. I want to just kind of put a spin on this for you guys. Because here's what I know. Here's what I've been around long enough to see as we close up today's broadcast. And that's that generations tend to zig and zag. So when you see a generation go zig, stand by. Their children are likely to zag. It's not common for children to follow directly after their parents. So if we have a whole generation that went left, guess what's coming next? A huge move right. Huge. So you're going to see a lot of young people wake up. You're going to see a pushback from the other side, from the younger generations. They're going to ask new questions. Some of you are raising some of those question askers. You're raising some of those who are going to go, wait a second, let's check the record. And because of the age of light that we live in today, the lies, the wicked lies of the enemy are being destroyed by exactly what Yahuwah told us, the brightness of the King's coming. And so each of you are becoming brighter and brighter. You're gaining more understanding of the things of the kingdom. That makes you harder to fool, doesn't it? Makes it harder for the devils to get over on you. And you begin to see how they have tricked us all into cursing ourselves with some of these things. And so hopefully, little by little, week by week, we're all waking up and going, you know what? I'm starting to figure this thing out. And that's why we don't like to be overwhelmed. We are informed without being overwhelmed. Well, again, thank you so much for joining us tonight. That's tonight's report. I pray it has been a barakah to you. And I'm so thankful for all of you that joined us here on the chat. Always a kind of fun thing to watch it scroll by and see you all saying hello to one another and commenting along the way. We certainly appreciate it. Please remember to share the link and encourage our brothers and sisters throughout the earth. Your encouragement matters. It's one thing for me to say, hey, watch the broadcast, but it's another thing when it comes from you. And many of you have, in fact, been a great blessing to others. So thank you for that. And thank you for your encouragement one to another. Well, that's it for today. I pray this broadcast has been a barakah to you. May Yahuwah Baruch each and every one of you.